Okay, so welcome back again, students. So kung nakapagpahinga ka na, so you're now ready to proceed to the next part of this module. Okay, ako din nakapagpahinga at nakapagpalit na rin ng bagong outfit. Okay, so proceed tayo sa slide 29. Sorry class, dun sa first guide, hindi ko na sabi kung nasang slide na tayo. So please bear with that. And then, eto na po, this is the interrelationship among organ-body system as well as the life functions. Okay? So, the human organism or the human being is enclosed by the integumentary system through the skin, which maintains boundaries from the outside to the inside. Okay? And then, digestion and metabolism is done by the digestive system through intaking food from the mouth and then digesting it and absorbing its nutrients to the bloodstream. And then yung mga unnecessary waste in the form of feces is expelled through the anus. And then yung mga mahalagang molecules like the nutrients will be transferred from the small intestine up to the blood vessels of the cardiovascular system. And then the nutrients will be transported throughout every parts of the body. Okay? As well as the oxygen na ini-intake naman ng respiratory system. Okay? So, the respiratory system from the nasal cavity up to the lungs will intake the oxygen, and then the oxygen will be exchanged or transferred from the thin walls of the lungs up to the blood vessels. So, pagpasok ng oxygen, lalabas si carbon dioxide. At yun yung i-expel naman ni respiratory system. And then, throughout din sa blood, syempre, yung mga nutrients na natatransport, pati yung mga cells, nagre-release yan ng mga waste. And that is the function of the respiratory system to excrete it, which specifically yung mga nitrogenous waste. Okay, so, yan yung major interrelationship ng mga organ system rather. Let's proceed with the slide 30. So, alam naman natin, class, na ang mga humans, syempre, at lahat ng mga organisms, mapata o mapahayop, needs to maintain life. Okay, so let us have the rundown of several factors organism needs for survival to be possible. So, these factors, which we will call survival needs, include nutrients, oxygen, water, and appropriate temperature and atmospheric pressure. Let's proceed to the next slide. Nutrients, which are the body takes in through food, okay, contains the chemical used for energy and cell building. So we have several kinds of nutrients in the form of carbohydrates, which is a major source of energy provided for body cells. Proteins, on the other hand, and to a lesser extent, fats, are essential for building cell structure. Fats also cushion body organs and provide reserve fuel. So, okay lang din kahit medyo katabaan kasi it means na it can protect you and it can give you extra energy. Minerals and vitamins as well are required for the chemical reactions that go on in cells and for oxygen transport in the blood. Pero lahat yan, yung mga nutrients niyan sa mundo, na ini-intake natin are useless unless oxygen is also available. Kasi may mga reactions tayo sa katawan na nagre-release ng energy from foods, like yung pagkikreate ng ATP or yung energy. At yung mga reactions na yan ay nagre-require ng oxygen. Kaya ang mga cells natin sa katawan can only survive few minutes without oxygen. At available ang oxygen sa blood natin, sa mga cells din natin, because of the collaborative effort of the respiratory, which is the intake and exchange of gases, as well as the cardiovascular system, which transports the oxygen na kailangan ng katawan at expel yung carbon dioxide. So, hindi lang po sa respiratory system yung sinasabi sa elementary na mag-exchange, then i-release yung carbon dioxide. Hindi po, nakikipag-coordinate si respiratory system kay cardiovascular system. Next slide. Water accounts for 60 to 80% of the body weight. It is the single most abundant chemical substance in the body and provides the fluid base for body secretion and excretion. So we obtain water chiefly from ingested food or liquids, and we lose it by evaporating from the lungs and skin and in body excretion like urination or pag-ihi. If chemical reactions are to continue at life-sustaining levels, normal body temperature must be maintained. Yan. If the temperature kasi drops below 37 degrees, which is the normal, metabolic reactions become slower and slower and finally stop. Yan yung case na kapag malamig ang panahon or kapag wala tayong ginagawa, hindi natin ginagalaw ang katawan natin, possible na tayo is nagdadagdag pa ng weight or ng fat sa ating katawan kasi walang nabe-breakdown eh. But if temperature is too high, chemical reactions proceed too rapidly and body proteins begin to break down. That's the case na, or in the worst case, death occurs. Kaya nga, di ba, pag nagkakatrangkaso or nagkakalagnat, pumapayat tayo. Kasi ang temperature, or kasi as the temperature increases, the higher the metabolic activity, causing the body to break down the proteins in your muscles. Kaya di mas masarap kumain ng mainit kasi the more higher yung temperature, bilis po yung metabolic activity ng katawan. The force exerted naman on the surface of the body by weight of air is referred to as the atmospheric pressure. Breathing and the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the lungs depend on appropriate atmospheric pressure. At high altitudes, where the air is thin and atmospheric pressure is lower, for example sa mga bundok, gas exchange may be too slow to support cellular metabolism. So those are the 5 major survival needs. And always remember, they must be present in our body in appropriate amounts as well. Hindi lang sapat na meron ka ng mga yan. Dapat walang excess or deficits kasi maaaring harmful yan sa katawan mo. For example, the food ingested must be high quality and proper amounts. Hindi po yung panis na, hindi po yung double dead na. So otherwise, nutritional disease, obesity, and starvation is likely. Okay, let's proceed to the next part. When you really think about the fact that your body contains trillions of cells in nearly constant activity, and that remarkably little usually goes wrong with it, you begin to appreciate what a marvelous organism you really is. Diba? Dun pa lang sa point na napakadetalyado from cells up to the largest organs. Diba? We are a wonderful person, created and wonderfully made. Meron tayong tinatawag na term na homeostasis, which describes the body's ability to maintain relatively stable internal condition, even though the outside world is continuously changing. Although yung literal translation ng homeostasis class is unchanging, pero sa context na to, the term does not really mean unchanging state or hindi mababago. Kasi instead, it's a dynamic state of equilibrium or balance. Pag sinabing dynamic, kahit na nagkakaroon ng pagbabago, nagkakaroon ka pa rin dapat ng internal balance in which internal condition may change and vary but always within relatively narrow limits. So in general, our body demonstrates homeostasis kapag yung mga needs niya or mga needs mo ay nami-meet at nagfa-function smoothly. Communication within the body is essential for homeostasis and is accomplished chiefly by the nervous and the endocrine systems, which use electrical signals delivered by nerves for or blood-borne hormones, respectively, as information carriers. Basta laging tatandaan, homeostasis, internal balance, even though the outside is changing. Para mas malaman pa natin ang concept nito, alamin natin ang 3 major components ng homeostatic control components. We have the receptor, control center, and effector. So let me have a laser pointer para mas makita nyo yung tinuturo ko. So number 1, the receptor. The receptor class is a kind or is a type of sensor that monitors and respond to changes in the environment. Pwedeng present siya sa skin. Okay, pwedeng present siya sa mata, syempre sa dila, sa pandinig. It responds to such changes called stimulus by sending information or input to the component which is the control center. In this context, for example, nakahipo ka ng mainit na kawali. The receptor there is present in the skin. The input or the information will be received by the control center, which determines or yun nga, the control center. And then yung information flows from the receptor to the control center is along the afferent pathway. Pag sinabi nating afferent, approaches to the control center. So the information na mainit yung nahawakan ni receptor is magpo-proceed through afferent center, afferent pathway, mapupunta kay control center. And then, the control center determines the level or set point at which a variable is to be maintained. Pag sinabing variable are factors that can change. Okay? This component analyzes the information it receives and then determines the appropriate response or course of action. So for example, nakahawak ka nga ng mainit na kawali. The control center will command or send an information na i-withdraw mo, tanggalin mo yung kamay mo dyan kasi masasaktan ka lang. Okay? Which is, yun nga, punta na tayo dun sa third component which is the effector. The effector provides the means for the control center's response. Siya yung nag-a-act dun sa respond na binigay ni control center. Okay? Information flows from the control center to the effector along the efferent pathway. Efferent naman kasi it exits from the control center. Once again, receptor, afferent pathway, control center, efferent pathway, effector. Okay? The results of the respond then feedback to influence the stimulus or the original change, either by reducing the amount of change, which is negative feedback, so that the whole control mechanism is shut off, or by increasing the amount of change, or positive feedback, so that the negative or the reaction continues at an even faster rate. Okay? Punta tayo sa dalawang uri ng control mechanisms, which is the negative feedback and the positive feedback. So once again nga, it's either ang stimulus ay mare-reduce or mas magko-continue pa at a faster rate. Okay. Negative feedback or most homeostatic control mechanisms are negative feedback. In such system, the net effect of the response to the stimulus is to either shut off the original stimulus or reduce intensity. Okay? Basta parang bumaba yung kanyang intensity. So these are the examples of negative feedback. Okay, pakibasa na lang kasi I'll give you an example in this illustration. So this is the figure that shows interaction among the elements of the homeostatic control and to maintain system or internal or stable internal equilibrium. Okay? So let us say, for example, that the variable is imbalance. Example is the increase in blood sugar, which may cause diabetes. How will homeostasis be achieved? So para siyang season na may isa sa taas, may isa sa baba. Paano dapat ma-attain tong balance? First, the stimulus produces the change in variable. As for example, increase in blood sugar. And then, next slide, the first component, which is the receptor, will detect the change that is happening in the amount of blood sugar. Information about the increase of blood sugar will be sent to the control center through the afferent pathway. And then, the control system, mainly, for example, the brain, will create an information or command of what should be done to reduce the amount of blood sugar, thus preventing disease. And this information will be sent to the effector through the efferent pathway. And lastly, the effector will yield a response that will reduce the effect of the stimulus, which is the amount of blood sugar. And in this case, the effector will be the pancreas that will release insulin, and insulin will regulate the amount of sugar by transforming it into energy. Okay? Thus, balance or homeostasis is achieved. So this is an example of negative feedback. Once again, this feedback reduces or shuts off the original stimulus from an increase of blood sugar and then to an increase or to a decrease of blood sugar. So ito yung interaction ng tatlo. Okay? Another example is this one. The stimulus is the heat, which allows the temperature to rise. Receptors, such as temperature-sensitive cells in our skin, will send the information via afferent pathway to control center, specifically the thermoregulatory center of the brain. And then the brain will send a command via efferent pathway to the effector, which is the sweat glands. Then sweat glands will secrete sweat, which acts as a cooling mechanism when it evaporates. Thus, body temperature will fall and balance or homeostasis is achieved once again. It goes the other way when the stimulus is cold and the body temperature falls down. So those are the situational examples of negative feedback mechanisms. So now let's proceed with the positive feedback mechanism. Positive feedback mechanisms are rare in the because they tend to increase the original disturbance or stimulus and to push the variable farther from its original value. So parang ine-exaggerate niya yung original stimulus. Okay? Typically, these mechanisms control infrequent events that occur explosively and do not require continuous adjustments. So example na nga niyan, pinaka-major example is blood clotting as well as giving birth to a baby. Dun sa giving birth to a baby, 'di ba? Yung uterus or the muscles in your womb, in the mother's womb will be will be forced to to contract through the form of oxytocin or through the hormone oxytocin. Yung oxytocin na yan, nagre-release siya na excessive amount i-send dun kay uterus in order to enhance its labor contraction. So, mas sumasakit, mas kailangan pang sumakit. Mas kailangan pang i-stretch para lumabas po yung baby. Hindi matatapos ang positive feedback hanggat hindi natatapos yung labor. Okay, that's positive feedback. Kasi nag-i-increase yung yung stimulus, ine-exaggerate. Yung platelet plug formation naman and blood clotting, ito nga yan. For example, nagka-break or tear or that occurs in the blood vessel wall. So, mangyari, ma-initiate yung positive feedback. The platelets will adhere to site and release chemicals. Magre-release ng chemicals yung mga platelets. Tapos, yung chemicals na yun, yung mag-aalaw para mag-coagulate siya or para magdikit-dikit. Di ba parang, di ba pag nagkasugat din tayo, ganyan yung ginagawa ng mga platelets para magkaroon ng lingab or para matakpan, masil yung mismong sugat natin. And then yung pag-release ng chemicals ni platelets is pa yun ng more platelets. Kaya once na dumami yung platelets, nag-release ng chemical, mas dadami ang platelets, mas dadami ang chemicals. Okay? Yun yung positive feedback. Okay? And thus, homeostasis is achieved kasi nga at the end, naging okay din yung sugat. So those are the following concept of homeostasis. Okay? Under homeostasis. To summarize, homeostasis is the ability of the organism to achieve balance and equilibrium even though there are changes happening in our body. We are in the slide 50. Also, throughout the course, we'll highlight the concept of homeostasis because it is so important that most disease can be regarded as being the result of its disturbance, a condition which is called homeostatic imbalance. We provide examples of homeostatic imbalance throughout this course to enhance your understanding of normal physiological mechanisms. So once again, guys, magpahinga ulit tayo kasi let's proceed dun sa mismong highlight ng ating lesson, the language of anatomy. So see you, proceed next next audio ka na or next video file. Thank you!